G'day guys and gal. There are many mysteries out there. What is the Emperor's true goal? Are the Tyranids running from something? Who is really on the Epstein list? However, one of the greatest is where the hell is Leman Russ? I mean, there is a decent bit of mystery behind all the missing loyalist Primarchs, but most of them popped up later in some capacity for a bit of a cameo, like Vulcan during the War of the Beast or Korax when he was being Lorgar's boogeyman. But Leman just got up one day, took his finest warriors with him and vanished. However, there are a few breadcrumbs here and there that give us some clues as to where he went and what he is doing. Before we get started, you do not want to start 2026 as a cuck, and the fastest way to get cucked is on the internet. So I present Surfshark VPN as your ultimate cuck shield. But what is a VPN, why are you a cuck, and why is Surfshark the best VPN? Well, a VPN, or virtual private network, is a software that allows you to mask your IP and online identity before then accessing the internet of other regions. There are a ton of reasons why you'd want to do this, from accessing way better streaming service libraries, which is great for Australians as we always get cucked by licensing deals, to bypassing government firewalls. For example, having a VPN in China is essential to being able to connect with the outside world, or it's just as simple as protecting yourself while you browse to avoid people stealing your identity, data, or payment info, i.e. protect yourself from being cucked. But why Surfshark? Well, it's easily the most user-friendly. Just one click and bang, you're in. Even better, with my link surfshark.com/major or code MAJOR, you'll get 4 extra months of Surfshark, so it's also one of the best valued on the market. Start 2026 right. Don't be a cuck. Cheers to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Today we'll attempt to uncover the whereabouts and objective of Leman Russ, which may help us determine when he is due to return to the setting. Let's get into it. So there are a few things we need to consider as a bit of a baseline. Firstly is that Leman Russ will likely be the next loyalist Primarch to return, not because I have proof or anything, but if both me and Valrak agree on it, then it must be true. And secondly, we need to consider Leman's state of mind when the heresy ended. Leman was incredibly depressed post-heresy. He felt a massive amount of responsibility for the way things played out, and yeah, as he should, the dude shat the bed multiple times, fucking up time after time and costing the loyalists dearly. Like the dude attacked Prospero when the Emperor told him to bring Magnus back to Terra, pushing the Thousand Sons to becoming traitors, which in turn ruined the Emperor's best chance to stabilize the Golden Throne and Webway, whilst also greatly weakening his own Legion and getting a lot of Sisters of Silence killed. He then got smacked by the Alpha Legion, taking further damage, and when he returned to Terra to finally have the chance to make amends and fortify the palace, he decided he would rather do a suicide attack on Horus's Legion with his own weakened Legion. Everyone told him not to go, and the odds of success were basically nil, with the odds of death and catastrophic failure being extremely high. The risk to reward ratio was so shit, yet Leman did it anyway. It was only by some absolute miracle that his Legion managed to ambush the Sons of Horus to begin with, and an even bigger miracle that Leman was able to duel Horus, then an even bigger miracle that he managed to actually land a blow on Horus. Then when he could have ended the heresy then and there, he hesitated, giving Horus time to recover and beat Leman, with Leman only surviving because thousands of his best warriors sacrificed their lives. The Space Wolves were then mostly knocked out of the heresy, only a handful surviving, with Leman getting saved by Korax. As a result of that, Leman arrived on Terra too late and too weak to do anything. He actually ended up getting stabbed in the chest by the Lion, as the Lion was so enraged at himself and at Leman for being too late to Terra to save the Emperor, so he took it out on Leman. But yeah, if you look at Leman's actions during the heresy, not only did he achieve basically nothing, but his actions actually hurt the loyalists. Even that mortal wound he dealt to Horus, Horus ended up fully recovering from. You could argue the recovery delayed Horus a bit, but sacrificing one of the deadliest loyalist legions to make Horus take a nap is not a very good trade in my opinion. When the Lion stabbed Leman, Leman didn't even try to defend, dodge, or flinch. He saw the blow coming and welcomed it. The fight from him had drained, although he did make it clear he wanted to undo the damage he had done and he had not yet given up. Likewise, the Lion could not bring himself to actually kill his brother, so he made sure the wound was non-fatal. Leman would side with Rogel Dawn in the debate between the Primarchs on what action they should take. Rogel wanted to viciously pursue the traitors and massacre them. Gilliman wanted to consolidate their victory and slowly and steadily rebuild. Gilliman would win the debate, mostly because he had the most amount of guns, but Russ would ignore the edict and strike out anyway. Now we don't know too much about what he did during the scouring, not yet at least. The new scouring series is likely to have some cool scenes with Russ in it. Russ also ignored Gilliman's edict to split the legions into chapters, partly because he disagreed with it, but mostly because so many Space Wolves had died because of his fuck-ups that he had about a chapter's strength left anyway, so he couldn't actually make successors. Future attempts to make successors ended up in disaster until the arrival of the Primaris. Leman would eventually return to Fenris, where he would lead his chapter for the next 200 years. I'm sure he would have done some solid reflecting during those 2 centuries, judging by his defeated but not giving up tone. Like he was shattered, but not in like a depresso espresso way of just giving up or being borderline suicidal like Roger was. It's clear he just wanted to atone for his mistakes. The century or two after the Scouring was also the most peaceful in Imperial history, so the Xeno races were still reeling from the Great Crusade. There was no Tau, Tyranids or Necrons, Chaos had been slapped harder than a pair of dangly balls, and the traitor legions had been scoured from real space and confined to the Eye of Terror. Until the War of the Beast, the Imperium would genuinely be the most chill it had ever been. So it was definitely a time of what next, and also a time where Primarchs felt like their obligations to the Imperium were over and they could pursue their own goals, without concern that their absence would cause a collapse. Korax, Jagadai and Vulcan had all left the Imperium on their own side quests at this point, so Russ gathered his chapter together and told them he was going to go get milk. And by milk, I mean the Tree of Life, a mythological legend in the Warp, a tree that was said to be able to heal anything. Leman thought that if he healed the Emperor, that would be the ultimate atonement for his fuck-ups. So he took his Wolfguard elite warriors, other than Bjorn, who he left in charge, something that greatly depressed Bjorn as he felt unworthy. However, in fact, it was Leman's way of telling him he was the most worthy as he trusted the future of the chapter to Bjorn. And then he strode off into the Eye of Terror to try find this Tree of Life. Now this is where most people's knowledge of Leman's post-heresy lore ends, so where did he go? Well, here are the clues. The Tree of Life is heavily theorized to be Isha, elder god of healing and shit. She's currently imprisoned by Nurgle, who tests all of his plagues and diseases on her. However, she is always able to cure herself. Isha could theoretically restore the Emperor, but how is Leman's quest going? Well, every once in a while the Space Wolves launch a Great Hunt to try find their Primarch. The Great Hunts are usually triggered by omens and signs from the Rune Priests, so they're sort of like following destiny and fate. In some Great Hunts, there is actually some clues left behind of Leman. For example, it seems like the second Great Hunt actually recovered Leman's armor, infused with warp power, binding it to Fenris, which insinuates Leman had been eating a lot of warp exposure in his quest, which yeah, that checks out. Other Great Hunts thought they may have spotted their Primarch, however all of them end up doing some kind of great deed for the Imperium, such as striking a decisive blow on Chaos. This may mean that Leman is able to still guard his chapter and send them visions to help them strike at their enemy. There was actually a non-canon but official Warhammer event called the Hunt for Russ, where Space Wolf players versus Tyranid players were the results impacting the lore. This event stated Russ was wandering Fenris and was getting attacked by Tyranids who wanted to eat him, so the Space Wolves had to try rescue their Primarch. Now obviously this isn't the case with the actual lore, but still worth a mention. There is also a regular mention of the Wolf Time, kinda like a Ragnarok, where the end times would come and Leman would return. 40k loves its 2 ticks from midnight on the Doomsday Clock vibe, so it has been stated that it is almost Wolf Time, and I believe Leman will return in some sort of Ragnarok style. Magnus the Red also insinuated that he knew where Leman was and he found it pretty funny, indicating Leman was trapped somewhere. So that's what we know, but what does it mean? Well, this is getting a bit theory crafty, but basically we can say that Leman took his force into the warp and has been traveling around the warp and likely occasionally appearing in real space. Wherever he is in the warp is pretty deep, as very few characters, both Traitor Marine or Demon, have ever referenced him. If he was going on a rampage, it would be more well known. I believe he has hit some sort of snag in his quest, trapped in some dimension of Magnus or Tzeentch's making, or maybe he just hasn't figured out how to get into Nurgle's mansion yet to free Isha. I believe his return novel will involve him breaking through this snag and returning to real space. Perhaps not with the Tree of Life in tow, but with the Emperor starting to wake up somewhat, I can definitely see him helping Leman return. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Emperor setting fire to Nurgle's garden cleared the snag Leman was stuck on. It would be a cool way to tie it all together. As for the character itself, many people say Leman was like Thor, powerful but rash, and they believe now he will be like Odin. However, others think he will go full furry werewolf mode. I think it might be a mix. That much warp exposure would have allowed him to ascend in a similar way that Corvus had. So perhaps he has a wise and patient form, but when in rage unleashes his beast. Would be kinda cool, not gonna lie. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be, where we have a boatload of Battle Mace 40 million hentai, a bunch of live action nude cosplays, and some awesome 40k fan art. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.